it was a tough issue to win. All the internal polling showed consistently that we were in a very, very tough race. There was some public polling done by prominent polls in California which showed larger leads than our internal polling ever showed. And that was, on one hand, encouraging the people working on the campaign because they thought, well, maybe they know something we don't. But on the other hand, it was discouraging because it gave the impression to lots of people in our community and outside our community, particularly allies, that really that everything was in hand and that we were going to be fine and we would win and California would not roll back this right. In point of fact, I think the history of any time any minorities vote, in any minority communities' rights are put up for a popular vote, almost invariably it loses, whether it's the LGBT community, whether it's the African American community where we lost very, very discouraging. In 1964, the height of the civil rights movement, a fair housing initiative in California was defeated. This was after Martin Luther King died. So you put the votes of a minority up, put the rights of the minority up for a popular vote, and you're in an uphill struggle no matter what the circumstance. We had a very, very dedicated and zealous opposition. Our opponents were much more motivated in the earlier stages of the campaign than most of the grassroots in our campaign. And it's an issue that, although California has an image in some places of being a socially liberal, progressive state, it is actually 2 or 3 different states, and it's not Massachusetts even in terms of liberals. We've had Republican governors for 21 out of the last 25 years in California. We gave the country Nixon and Reagan. So there's California is not all Santa Monica, San Francisco. There are counties where we lost 75 to 25.
Yeah, you lost LA County too.
We lost LA County by 2,000 votes, 2,900 votes. So I tend to look at it, despite all the agony and the disappointment, as a building block. We moved from losing by 22 points with exactly the same language on the ballot in 2000, losing by 4 points in 2008. So you don't have to be a statistician or an actuarial expert to recognize that the trend lines are moving our way, and in 2 years or 4 years, it's likely that we will achieve the victory that we are looking for and we deserve. But it's a learning process for millions and millions of people. It's an issue that wasn't even on the national discussion agenda in the early 90s. And now it's become, for better or worse, whether we like it or not, the litmus test issue for the LGBT community. So the building block part of it is, though, in the aftermath of that defeat, people are galvanized, and not just in California, but in places all around the country. They're sort of learning the lesson and doing stuff. And we heard an anecdote from our friend Sue Hyde is over here talking about what's going on in Peoria, Illinois now, and a local sort of gay controversy is rallying people, and Prop 8 is becoming a symbol in that regard, which is a good thing. We anticipate the Supreme Court will uphold the ballot measure. For those of you who don't know, there is a case that's been filed in the California Supreme Court challenging whether or not, the very question that I posed, whether or not it's right, legal, appropriate, constitutional to put the votes, put the rights of the minority up for a popular vote to the assembly. But based on the oral arguments that were heard in the court in March, everybody believes that the court will vote to uphold it on sort of strict legal grounds. And they have to render that decision by the 4th or 5th of June. What happens after that? There will be another ballot measure. The LGBT community will put forth a permanent marriage equality measure. The debate is only about when. We've got an election in June of 2010, we've got November 2010, and then there's 2012. And there's just a lot of sort of tactical internal conversation, polling, focus group stuff about when it makes the most sense, when we have the best chance to win. There are people who believe absolutely we need to go back right now, the sooner the better, while people are energized and activated. There are other folks who think we raised and spent $40 million last year to try to raise and spend $40 million next year in this economic climate isn't really realistic. And I'm sort of an agnostic on that issue, but I lean toward, I wouldn't want to be the guy to go back and ask somebody gave $50,000 6 months ago. We give $50,000 to the again right now. We're talking June 2010. Obviously, we need to organize about this now. So that's the debate that's going on. But in the meantime, we're not just debating. Our organization, other organizations around the state, we're canvassing. We're going door to door in targeted communities. We can't do the whole state. California's enormous. We can't afford that. But we've identified precincts, targeted yes voters, going on their doors, knocking on LGBT people, asking them why they voted yes, what it meant to them, that sort of stuff. We're trying to get as much information as we can so that whenever it comes again, and it will come. I mean, we're going to win. There's no doubt about that. It's just a question of time. But we'll be better prepared, better messages, better outreach to communities where we need to do better in every community. We just need votes. But we're doing more targeted outreach in the Central Valley, where we do very poorly, in people of color communities across the board. So, long answer, but a lot going on, and I'm, despite the disappointment, and there was some hard feeling across the board for all kinds of reasons, I'm very encouraged by where we are and where we'll be.
Did anyone else want to address that, or should we go on to the next?
Yes.
I just want to say something very quickly about the strategy. One of the things is that when we look at it, is that it certainly is a state-by-state strategy. And I'll give you an example. When we now look at the states where we have marriage equality, Massachusetts, Vermont, Connecticut, and now Iowa, you don't have to have the coalition build it. You really don't, because those are predominantly white states, and the movement is predominantly white. And so you're likely, to be quite honest, when you think about this, to get marriage equality pushed in states that are predominantly white than those that are more heterogeneous. But states that are like California, say New York, and others, whether they're in the north or the south or whatever, it's imperative that you do coalition building. Now, I'm not saying that if any of you reside in a white state, you can go back and say, I'm off the hook, I don't have to deal with these black people. I'm certainly not saying that. But I'm just saying, though, but when we look at this just realistically, the states that have passed have been homogeneous states. And so the kind of fighting that goes on in the movement and stuff that certainly went on here, believe it or not, but does not. You don't have that obstacle. So I mean, so one of the things you have to look at is the struggle is state by state. But it is my hope that it will be framed in such a way that to not only just get communities of color on board about it, but that as a nation will understand the importance of marriage equality. I mean, one of the things that the civil rights movement did, it raised the moral consciousness of the people to say, well, why would we not do this for our people? And what is missing really is the way in which the debate is so framed and also pictured that white people see it as a white movement. I mean, I have straight white folks, so that's what happened. We need to see the faces that come out of our movement. We don't do that. There's not good reporting about when someone has been bullied or a hate crime has been happened. We constantly want a sort of pristine image, but we need to see the drag queen. We need to see transgender people. We need to hear about these kind of killings. You need to see the very faces of how, hate crimes against us look like. Because to me, what makes our movement so prophetic is because you'll find a queer person, no matter what his or her race, class, where they are in the world. So it calls a much grander, picturing of how we can move forward to raise this moral consciousness. That's just my thought on that.
And since you brought out one of the elephants in the living room on that issue, and the folks that were behind the No on A campaign did a great job. Many of them are friends of mine, but it would be terrible if we didn't use this opportunity to look at that. And so I thought that was a very eloquent description of one issue in terms of hiding and lacking. And it goes back to my uncle's quote about when you project a lack of authenticity, you don't get resonance from the audience, even a statewide audience. And the other, there's two other issues. One is there's we have a national movement of individuals moving from state to state. So again, it goes back to what I said earlier, when we've got got pockets of suburban communities and rural communities that are not being targeted, that are not being outreached, that we're not doing education. Those folks do move to California, they do move to Florida, and they do affect the vote there. So we have to have kind of a national presence and have an outreach to all of those communities. And then the third piece, which is the really big elephant, is that there is an ongoing debate right now amongst the major givers, and Lance will touch on this, I'm sure, this evening. But there is a outgiving, which is the major donors to the LGBT organizations had a big event in Las Vegas, and it was very, it was hot, and it probably needed to be hot, and there was a lot of dialogue, and that dialogue continues. There are healthy conversations and disagreements going on with the LGBT community, and how are we positioning ourselves, and how are we from our recent losses, and how did we benefit from our recent losses. So, and that is a very, very needed conversation that I think had to happen. We were really in a situation where there wasn't a lot of growth, and there's an old saying that, you know, in order for a cherry tree to be really beautiful, you got to prune it. So we got pruned. If you look at our movement as a cherry tree, we've just got pruned, and now hopefully we'll prune it so that it really does have a chance to blossom and grow.
Hey, we had a question back here.
Oh, sure. I have a question for, is it Lieutenant Choi?
Yeah.
So there's that great, or really moving, intense scene in Milk where they're fighting that discriminatory proposition, and he asks everyone on his team to come out and gives them the phone. It's like, call your parents, call your neighbors, like, you need to come out. People need to know that we're here. And I'm curious, since the mandate of West Point, you said it don't lie, steal, or cheat, or tolerate those who do. I'm curious what your opinion is about those military people who have chosen to not come out yet.
Right. Well, one thing to go around your question, basically, when a unit has to deal with somebody who does come out, the unit actually itself goes in the closet. Really, the people that we need to tell to come out of the closet are those units and those leaders that are dealing very professionally with those who do come out. If somebody does come out of the unit, they start an investigation, they get kicked out. They can get an other than honorable discharge if it's based off of conduct. But just identity as who you are, you can get administrative discharge, and you're on your own. The saddest part of that, and I think really what you are asking is, what does the unit not do? The unit does not give any psychological or psychiatric help or counseling. People that come back from Iraq, they all deserve to have mental counseling and partnership with people in their families, in their communities. The Army, to them, people that say I'm gay and admit to who they are, they get nothing. They get out on the street, and that whole idea of family, of unit cohesion, all of a sudden doesn't apply.
Can I just throw, I feel very strongly about the Don't Ask, Don't Tell issue. I worked in 1993 in an effort to get President Clinton to stick by his pledge to overturn it, and he essentially compromised in a way that I think was fairly disgraceful. I say that as a person who supported him vigorously when he was running for office. But I mean, this policy is really morally reprehensible to me. I mean, cutting away the euphemisms, what you're saying is, in order to serve in the military, you will ask people to, on the condition that they're willing to lie. And Dan's just talking about these honor codes which they have, and honor, integrity, commitment. That's what there's really the watchwords about the military. But they have institutionalized a policy which says essentially you have to lie, and if you're willing to lie, you can serve. Well, that's, to me, that's morally reprehensible. It ought to be overturned today. It won't be because we don't have leadership in the Congress. It's the American people. If you know, the polling now showing 80% plus majorities favor the overturn. But in Washington, members of Congress, the Defense Department, and Republicans are the key to this. And it's going to take time. And then the Obama administration is not eager to put that in the forefront. But we need to keep the pressure on. We need to keep the pressure on the people who have the possibility of doing this, responsibility to move it forward, because this has to go. We just can't stand it.
Well, if I could continue on, I did come out to my unit. The next month I went training. We were at Fort Indian Town Gap in Pennsylvania. And we were doing some marksmanship training, we were firing some live rounds downrange. Everybody was saying, just don't get fragged, make sure you watch your back. I said, well, I just told everybody I was gay. I sure as hell's going to watch my back anyway. But when I came out, for 4 days, nobody said a damn thing. And I said, maybe these people really are illiterate and they don't know how to read the Army Times, or maybe they don't watch Rachel Maddow. They certainly don't watch Logo, but I really thought nobody knew. And it just, to answer the question of what happens, really nothing happened. And I was really shocked. But on the last day, we all went to the bar and we had something to drink. Everybody let their hair down. Senior NCOs, people who've been in the military for decades. My peers, my subordinates came up to me and said, hey, we know, and we support you 100%. And then I said, wow, my unit is professional. So that's actually what happens when units are professional and people come out. And when units that are that close, when they go to war, we are trained and we are more close-knit. And actually has, in a way, made me a lot more proud to be in the Army. And you're damn right I'm going to fight harder.
Yeah, the don't ask, don't tell is not a policy, it's a law. And so until the law gets repealed, things aren't going to change. You may have addressed this already, I left in here, so if you have, okay. But do you have any personal opinion or sense of when the law might get changed? It looks like the House, for a lot of people in the House who are supporting a law, a piece of legislation that could repeal it, but the Senate, I think, will be a problem, and also Secretary Gates doesn't seem to have this as a priority. Do you have any opinion yourself?
Right, there's a lot of priorities right now. I think because we're in a time of 2 wars, it should be a #1 priority for Secretary Gates. It should be a #1 priority for Senate. There is a bill that's 1283 that is to repeal the law. As right now, some people can put their hopes in the president coming down with the budget and saying, okay, well, repeal this, and if the president did by executive order, at least it could stop people from getting kicked out. The law would still remain. So it is, yes, it is a law and it is a policy.
There's a bill, but President Obama is on record in saying that he favors the overturning of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And there's an organization, Service Member Legal Defense Network, which is its primary mission is to support LGBT service members and also to get these laws changed, and they're working very hard to, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen, and certainly people in the military need to be brought around, but it does need to be made clear to the Obama administration that this is something that he needs to follow through on it. And so there's going to be a little heavy lifting, a little political capital is going to have to be invested at some point, recognizing you don't want to do it the first week out in the new administration, given the magnitude and the range of other problems, but on the other hand, we can't wait till every other problem is solved before we address issues like this one. So I think that keeping the drumbeat going is going to be part of that process. But I think, despite a lot of opposition, this will happen in the first Obama term.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, may I have permission to stand, please? Thank you. Reverend Sister Monroe, thank you for your remarks. And I agree with you utterly 100% that just because we may live in a state or in a city that is not significantly diverse racially, there are still very important reasons for us to reach across and reach out to sisters and brothers of different colors than we, whether we're working on marriage equality or any other issue. Now, as to Iowa, you may know that I believe the leader of the Iowa NAACP appeared at a rally opposing the unanimous decision of the Iowa Supreme Court that the Iowa marriage laws amounted to unconstitutional discrimination against same-sex couples, appeared at a rally opposing the decision and spoke very forcefully about his opinion that the Iowa Supreme Court was wrong and he would do everything he could to oppose and undo
Can we
that
get to a
decision.
question? Can we get to a question?
A question?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Scott, out in California, what are the new thinkings about, and maybe new organizing strategies going towards creating a marriage equality campaign, which I think it will be a campaign, that is more reflective of the broad swaths of communities in California, especially communities of South California?
Well, as I mentioned in an earlier response, one of the positive things that's happened in the aftermath of the defeat is that, aside from the continuing work of a lot of the people who were involved initially, there are literally dozens and maybe hundreds of new organizations that have sprung up, grassroots, internet, stuff that I don't even understand how they communicate with each other, kinds of organizations. There is a real sense that everybody should be talking to everybody. Not everybody agrees. One of the great strengths of our movement, this is something that Irene alluded to, is that we are tremendously diverse. We are everywhere, and that is what will ensure our ultimate victory. Because we're Mary Cheney, and we're in Republican families, and in rich people, and poor people, and trans people. But that also makes it very difficult for us to come together and decide we're all going to do the same thing together at the same time. And there was a broad cross-section, a broader cross-section than ever existed before of organizations, community groups that were working on a No on Aid campaign. Sort of an unprecedented effort. We had the NAACP, the head of the NAACP in California was on the campaign from the outset and worked very, very strongly. We had labor, Planned Parenthood, and a variety of groups. But short version is more groups, and we're all trying to integrate all of that, at least so that we're informed and supporting each other's efforts and not bickering with each other, trying to keep the eye on the prize. But there's a lot more targeted outreach in a lot of the areas where we weren't strong. Central Valley, I sit on the board of an African committee. Probably there are only two really significant LGBT African American groups in Los Angeles, the Jordan Western Coalition, and struggling to raise enough money to get our messages out there, but we continue to expand that. And in that diversity of efforts, I think will come the ultimate victory. And I never expect everybody to be on the same page all the time, but that's not necessary.
But it can be quite a strength, and without going to the point of saying that we're like the insurgency or that Sky's like Osama bin Laden or anything, no, it's this dispersal and the individual strengths that we have can be extremely strong, and we can each do our part, and that's not necessarily to be seen as a weakness.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Lots of it.
Well, I was waiting for someone to say transgender and to spell out that, important part of our movement. And I thank Reverend Monroe for talking about trans people. And I would love to hear, we've been talking a lot about marriage, which I think is important, and there have been some trans critiques of the importance of marriage. But regardless, I would like to hear, from each of you about how your work deals with trans people and issues facing trans people, which, across these arenas are still incredibly important and I think hasn't really come up enough in the discussion.
Well, okay, I'll start. This has been ongoing before it became sort of a national attention, but the task force, and Sue can perhaps speak more to this than I can. I can only speak to it from a pastoral point of view. But when we talk about LGBTQ homelessness, the largest group are transgender kids. And of those transgender kids, Sue can back me up and say more about that, they're African American and Latino. And so, I'm doing a book called Society's Throwaway Kids. It's the title of the book that I'm writing about that, a pastoral guide on dealing with this issue, hoping black pastors will do something on it, and others. But I deal with trans kids a lot. A lot of them will come at hours of the night, knocking on the door, telling me and I, look, I've been thrown out, or, I think my partner is an ER physician, and they'll say, I think I might have caught something, or blah, 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 blah. So we deal with them on the down low, any way they come, we really deal with them a lot.
And, it's a great issue that you brought up. One of the things that I did before coming here, just because this was an LGBT issues panel, but there was no transgender person on it, was to reach out to my friends who are part of the transgender community. And the homelessness issue and the employment issue affects our community, our transgender brothers and sisters, more than any other community, as was said. I have, again, my background is workforce services, so we had a tremendous victory in San Francisco. It's the first program for transgendered employment, and it's from general revenue dollars of the city, so we can see how far that program's going to go, knowing our current budget. But we have a huge $4 billion program from the U.S. Department of Labor that's meant to serve targeted, multivariate populations, and I have been fighting for years to get transgender community listed as a target group so that funding can go there, and I had an administration for 8 years that wouldn't even listen to the topic. So the part about the issue of being a fully inclusive movement is very important. We are a very schizophrenic movement, and when I say that, I mean that kind of as family. And when I say we're schizophrenic in our rights. We've got little pockets of rights here and there, but we don't have full equality. And and part of my message when I talk about hate crimes is that it's very difficult to teach young people so that you treat people equally and with respect when we don't have equality, full equality. So even if we undo don't ask, don't tell, or we pass a employment non-discrimination, we still have a huge set of areas where we are no longer equal. So it's a very difficult message for youth to understand. I speak with youth frequently, and they just don't understand it. They don't understand, again, when I did a class of folks who in San Francisco who were accused of bullying, and I talked to them, and they were confused by the message. They said, but this is a group of people who are not equal to us. And here they're telling me, I felt very good that they were honest enough and authentic enough to tell me that as a gay man standing in front of them. But again, we as a society have a responsibility of how we educate and raise our children. And it's kind of like, what other civil rights community would say, okay, you've given me 2 civil rights and I'm missing 10, but I should feel good about that because I'm moving in the right direction. At some point in our movement, we have to say, this is the time, we are the people, we're going to make it happen now. And I was very vocal and very strong, and a lot of people in the mainstream LGBT community, organizational community, were very angry at me at being so outspoken right away with the ENDA version that came out last year. But it really is a horrible statement on a movement when you take our most vulnerable community, our most targeted community, our most discriminated against community members, and you say to them, not only don't get on the bus with us right now, but really we're putting you under the bus and we're going to pass you by, but we're looking back and we're keeping you in mind. And that was really the message. And so we cannot do that again. That was one of the main lessons that we've learned this year, hopefully. And that's again where I go to where we're having this dialogue of the elephant in the living room and we're talking about it. And when I say we, I'm not working for an LGBT organization, so I'm kind of on the outside. But again, since you guys decided to label me an activist, I'm hoping that I'm making people uncomfortable.
I can comment just quickly. I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but my organization, the LA Gay and Lesbian Center, we like to call ourselves, we are the largest gay and lesbian organization in the world. We provide services across a wide spectrum, and we've dramatically expanded our trans services in the last 3 or 4 years in the employment area specifically, but also in the area of youth and homelessness. My colleague Kurt Shepard is here as Director of Children, Youth, and Family Services there. We operate transitional living facilities, and the trans population is large. About a
kids living in the house.
Yes. So we have that as an institutional priority in our organization, and we've seen that this emergence of trans activism in the last 3 or 4 years across a broad swath of the state and the country.
And right now, the movement to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell sees the transgender population and those rights to serve as more of a medical issue. If you have actually completed the transition, then you're serving as a man, you're serving as a woman. And actually, it touches on a little of an interesting point. I'm glad you brought it up. Women are not allowed to serve in units such as the infantry combat units. Some of the ridiculous statements that people said is, well, they'll be menstruating in foxholes. And so if you'll be afraid of a little bit of blood, then I think you signed up for the wrong thing.
Yeah, well, I don't know if this is an appropriate question to end on. That's a lot of pressure, but it's actually around strategy and tactics for the movement going forward. And one of the phrases that I used actually in the opening statement, talking about marriage equality, was you actually, sort of throwaway between the commas line said, which has really become the litmus test issue for the movement, was a phrase used. And sometimes it feels that way. It feels like when we talk about progress in the movement, state by state or nationally, in the last, I'll say, 2 years, it seems like what we talk about is marriage equality more than anything else. And so I have a two-part question, which is, number one, how did that happen? And or how or why? And the other is it a good thing? I mean, we've talked about a lot of other stuff we need to do. I mean, there's repeal don't ask, don't tell. There's employment equality. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done on a lot of fronts. And sometimes it feels like the preponderance of energy is getting focused on marriage equality. That's important. Why did that happen, and is it a good thing?
I can speak a little bit to that, and the first thing I want to say, it didn't happen because all of the gay and lesbian poobahs decided, hey, this is the issue we want, and we're going to get on it. In fact, just the opposite. What drove this initially, and this goes back to 1993, the first case in Hawaii, which is that individual couples brought lawsuits because they weren't going to take second-class citizenship any longer. And these people were by and large discouraged by the LGBT national organizations. The first couple that brought a successful case, the first group of couples, could not get Lambda Legal, our leading gay or lesbian organization, to support them in the 1990s. They got a straight ACLU lawyer to bring that case. But what happened was they started winning the cases. So you win the cases, and the gay legal groups are sitting there thinking, well, can't we did what, we're going to sit here and twiddle our thumbs, or we and be a part of this, and also to bring their expertise, because some cases make sense and other cases don't. You can bring a case in a court that you can't possibly win in. So Lambda was the first organization that really got involved in sort of sounding the alarm. This is coming whether you want it to come or not. So this is a force beyond the control of any organization or group of organizations. HRC didn't want to go anywhere near this, and it was to the frustration of a lot of folks at the time. And were reluctant until very recently. The fact of the matter is that this will continue to be the media issue because it's a great issue for the media, and we have to deal with what is presented. And we could talk a lot more about it, but that's where a lot of it is.
Does anyone else want to comment on that question? I think we can give him another question.
Just curious about.
Yeah, and then we'll end with you. So we'll have two more questions. This
Just
person.
curious in relationship.
But we're going to do this one first.
Is there any thought of changing, or why is it being considered to go at it from a civil union with all the attending the rights and privileges, this 1,000-some? Civil rights or civil union just seems a much more inclusive, less divisive, not as moralistic and emotionally creates a response to people. So is there a thinking of a shift in the strategy, or are we so down the path of marriage that it's all about the right to be able to pass property, be recognized under the law? You know, it just seems marriage is just such an emotional litmus test for people. And
Yeah, the word itself absolutely does.
And it's religious in many
Yeah.
ways. So it is as opposed to civil union, which is what government's all about. So that's my question. Are we speaking?
It's a good question, but again, I go back to the phrase activism. It does bring about the emotion, and any type of civil rights movement, you want to have that emotion come out, actually. But to your specific question, New Jersey actually did pass a law that made civil unions. I mean, the language of the law said it needs to be exactly the same as marriage. I actually was brought into Garden State Equality at the event with Governor Carr-Ryan when he had released the commission. They did a commission that said we've had domestic partnership that's equal to marriage now for a year, and he did a commission to evaluate it. And the commission, which was a diverse panel, including folks who weren't in favor initially of civil union, they unanimously said it is not equal to marriage. because the semantics of marriage play such a huge role that you do not have equality. And so New Jersey is now looking, of course, to follow the footsteps of New Hampshire in terms of legislatively doing it. But, you know, it's interesting, the message of equality has been embraced in the marriage argument, or the marriage argument has been able to embrace equality. And, you know, I go back to my uncle, who was a single voice and kind of where we are today. And he was a very polarized voice in many ways, because he did bring out, amongst other people, the issue of their sensitivity. But he would go out into the communities that would not necessarily embrace the LGBT community and talk to them. And so what we do have in a lot of civil rights movements is you have different ways of killing the messenger. And obviously one way is they killed Harvey, so you can kill that messenger. You can co-opt the messenger, and that's happened. And I'm not going to name who, but we've had our messengers co-opted where they've given in and they've compromised. But the message continues. There's a driving force, I think, in all human individuals who come from a background where they have been diminished or marginalized, and almost all of us come from those backgrounds if we go deep enough. There's something wrong with inequality, and so, period. And I think that's what this debate is about, and nothing defines it sometimes better than marriage, because we've used theology to attack not just the LGBT community, but every community that's ever been marginalized and diminished before. We've used theology, co-opted theology, to use that as an argument to divide and conquer people.
Let's not forget about military spouses, and let's not forget about the relationships that are torn apart when people deploy to Iraq and are gone from that relationship, but that relationship does not exist. I'm not talking about titles. The military loves titles, and I'd be somebody's husband or somebody's wife. And that's what the title is important, but it's really that support and the acknowledgement that we do exist.
Last question then.
This June will be 40 years since Stonewall, and July for me will be 40 years of gay liberation activism. So I want to register dissent with that background on gay marriage. Of the people I know, which would be a lot of activists for more than a quarter of a century, scholars and historians, quite a number are opposed to gay marriage. Others, like me, have mixed feelings, but think that it's wrong, it should be the #1 issue. Now, all I'm saying really is that there should be an open debate, and now it's too late, and you know, there has never really been a full open debate on this question. There are all kinds of things that to me would be far more important for what I would call the gay liberation movement. I think that's a fine term. Let me just list them. I want maybe 30 seconds. To give a positive image of relationships between males and between females, to have gay history and gay literature taught at places like Harvard, and believe me, they are not. There was more of that when I was in college. A long time ago. Okay, all I want to say is we need more than anything else free, open, untrammeled debate, and we haven't had it. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Did anyone want to make any closing comments about whether, you know, again, I think we've had come up over and over again this question of whether or not marriage should be at the center of our struggle, and it does seem to be the leading challenge. And the Reverend Irene Monroe has brought up some interesting critiques of how it's being done, and I would just like to make a final question, which is, what would be the way that the marriage, you know, how can we make marriage a truly inclusive, what needs to happen to make it